Welcome to your daily devotional with me, PMV. The four horsemen of the apocalypse sound menacing, don't they? Well, while this imagery originates in the Bible, it's been used in movies, in books, and even as comic book characters. So as we continue today with Revelation chapter 6, we see the four horsemen and how they are connected with the scroll that is being opened and the seals. And this is the beginning of what we call the tribulation. Before you turn to Revelation 6, though, I want to begin in Daniel 9. Daniel chapter 9, verses 24 to 27 record what is commonly called the 70 weeks prophecy. So Daniel was a young Jewish man who was taken captive by the Babylonians when they overthrew Jerusalem in 586 BC. The Jews were chosen by God to represent him to the world. They were supposed to be a light to the rest of the world, but they had fallen into idol worship. Their hearts had strayed from their God. They rebelled against God not just for a day or two, but for decades. And so God allowed them to be conquered. After they had been in captivity for some time, Daniel began to ask God about the future of his people, of the Jewish people. What was going to happen to them? So in Daniel chapter 9, as Daniel is praying and he's asking God about the future and he's actually confessing his sins and the sins of the people, God affirmed that he was going to do something, that he was not done with Israel. And Daniel affirmed that God was just in judging his people for their sins, and he pleaded for this deliverance and forgiveness and restoration. So as a response to Daniel's prayer, Daniel's repentance, Daniel's intercession on behalf of his people, God sent the angel Gabriel to Daniel, and Gabriel relayed a message to Daniel, a message from God to Daniel, and it was a prophecy about Israel's future. So Daniel chapter 9, verses 24 to 27 read, 70 weeks are determined for your people and for your holy city, to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublesome times. And after the 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end of it shall be with a flood. Until the end of war, desolations are determined. Last verse. Then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. But in the middle of the week, he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering. And on the wing of abominations shall be one who makes desolate, even until the consummation which is determined is poured out on the desolate. Okay, so in verse 24, where the English has 70 weeks, it is literally translated as 70 sevens. There are 7 days in a week, which is why some translations have weeks instead of sevens. But 70 sevens is another way of saying 70 times 7. So in this context, it's speaking of years. And if you add that up, it's 490 years. The way this prophecy was broken up, God was telling Daniel that he still had a plan for the Jewish people. And the Messiah was on his way, but it was not according to the time frame that they thought it would happen. Look at Daniel chapter 9, verse 27 one more time. Then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering. And on the wing of abominations shall be one who makes desolate, even until the consummation which is determined is poured out on the desolate. So this is a prophecy in the book of Daniel, hundreds of years before Jesus came, about the tribulation. And God has already fulfilled the things he's foretold in the first 69 weeks. But on God's calendar, there is 1 week, 1 7-year period. If this is remaining, and this is where God will fulfill his purpose for his creation. This is also a prophecy about the Antichrist. He will make a covenant with Israel, but in the midst of the 7 years, he will break his covenant and he will turn on Israel. And we'll see that in the weeks to come as we walk through Revelation. But for today, I want you to understand one thing. As the first seal is opened and the wrath of God begins, it is the fulfillment of Daniel's 70 weeks prophecy. So this is the unfolding of the last event on God's calendar for his creation. With that background, let's look at Revelation chapter 6, verses 1 and 2. That's all we'll cover today. Then we'll pick back up at verse 3 tomorrow. Now I saw the Lamb opened one of the seals. Now I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures saying with a loud voice like thunder, "Come and see." And I looked, and behold, a white horse. He who sat on it had a bow, and a crown was given to him. And he went out conquering and to conquer. So who is it that opened the first seal? Well, the Lamb, Jesus. We saw in Revelation chapter 5 that Jesus alone was worthy to take the scroll from the Father's hand and to open the seals. So the Father commits judgment, the judgment of this world, into the hands of the Son. And the opening of the first seal begins this judgment, or what we call the tribulation. So as Jesus opened the first seal, John was invited to what? Come and see. This first wave of God's wrath is represented by a rider on a white horse with what? A crown and a bow. So some believe that this rider on a white horse is Jesus. But what they're possibly doing is reading the imagery of Jesus that we have, we'll see later, in Revelation 19. And they're reading that back in Revelation 6. But I don't believe the rider in Revelation 6 is Jesus. In Revelation 19, Jesus will appear on a white horse. But he has many crowns and a sword, not one crown and a bow. So the Greek word for crown in Revelation chapter 6 is Stephanos, which this was used earlier to refer to the victor's crown when he was addressing the 7 churches directly. But in Revelation chapter 19, Jesus has many crowns, or in Greek, it is the diadema, which is the crown of royalty. So who is the rider in Revelation chapter 6? Well, some believe this could be the Antichrist. They say this is a picture of God giving the Antichrist the authority he needs to play his role, his purpose to be fulfilled in the tribulation. And this is possible, but I'm suspicious that this view is another case of reading something into the text that is not directly there. It sounds good, it's a possibility, but I'm not convinced. I think the identity of the writer and of the other 3 that we'll see next time are allusions to Zechariah chapter 1, verses 7 through 11, and chapter 6, verses 1 through 8. Much of what happens in Revelation is pointing back to Old Testament imagery. Now, Zechariah, he lived during the time when the Jewish people had returned from captivity and they were rebuilding the city of Jerusalem and the temple. So this is much after Daniel's time. And the people had become discouraged by the monumental size of the task. And as a part of the message of encouragement, Zechariah chapter 1, verses 7 through 11 read, "On the 24th day of the 11th month, which is the month of Shabbat, in the 2nd year of Darius, the word of the Lord came to Zechariah, the son of Bechariah, the son of Iddo the prophet. I saw by night, and behold, a man riding on a red horse, and it stood among the myrtle trees in the hollow, and behind him were horses, red, sorrel, and white. Then I said, My Lord, what are these? So the angel who talked with me said, I will show you what they are. And the man who stood among the myrtle trees answered and said, These are the ones whom the Lord has sent, who sent to walk to and fro throughout the earth. So they answered the angel of the Lord who stood among the myrtle trees and said, We have walked to and fro throughout the earth, and behold, all the earth is resting quietly. All right, well, let's wrap up for today. In Zechariah 1, we're going to tie this together. God sent his people a message of peace and encouragement. God would be in their midst, and he would speak peace to them, and they would dwell safely in the city that they were rebuilding. So there's a similar passage with the four horses in Zechariah chapter 6, verses 1 through 8 as well. So what I believe is that the four horsemen of Revelation 6 are drawing from Zechariah 1 and Zechariah 6 by way of contrast. In Zechariah, the horsemen reported peace on earth. But in Revelation 6, the horsemen are sent out to enact God's judgment on the earth. So what is the purpose of the white horse in Revelation chapter 6, verse 2? Well, look at the end of the verse. And he went out conquering and to conquer. Okay, so the opening of the first seal releases a conqueror who comes to the earth to bring defeat and submission to people. So how exactly and what he conquers, we're not told here, but God gives him the authority to do it. So again, the God who made all things is bringing his creation to his purposed end, and he's doing it in his time. You are a part of that. God holds your past, your present, and your future, and he desires you to trust all of it into his hands. Thank you for joining me today. For more information, go to pmvministries.org. As always, I hope you have a great day.